Hello and welcome back to Friday Night Games. I'm your host, Jay Comics. It's time for the final installment of our journey into the Donkey Kong arcade trilogy. We've already talked about Nintendo's launch into arcade stardom with the smash hit Donkey Kong, as well as their attempt to cash in on that success with the quick sequel, Donkey Kong Jr. What would be their next move? Perhaps unsurprisingly, Nintendo wanted to keep the Donkey Kong gravy train rolling and made a third installment in the Donkey Kong arcade series. We're going to be talking about this often overlooked and underrated game, and why you probably haven't heard much about it. Today we're talking about Donkey Kong 3. I mentioned at the end of the last video that 1983, the year after Nintendo released Donkey Kong Jr. to arcades, and the same year that Donkey Kong 3 was released, turned out to be the same year as the North American video game market crash. In the US, after the initial explosion of home video game consoles following the release of the Atari 2600, the market had become so saturated with lackluster but overpriced games that the public's imagination for home video games stalled. This was before the Nintendo Entertainment System arrived on the market and rejuvenated and possibly saved the video game market from an untimely demise. However, Japan experienced a far less severe market hit, and Nintendo was still just getting started with their video game ventures. They were continuing full steam ahead on new projects, both in arcades and in the home market. While Donkey Kong is undoubtedly the game which propelled Nintendo into video game history, it was not actually their first experiment or success with video games. I've mentioned before how they'd previously had smaller arcade hits, like Radar Scope, but you've probably heard of another of their successful video game ventures. Released in the spring of 1980, a full year before Donkey Kong hit the arcades, Nintendo had actually produced the first handheld video game experience in the form of the Game & Watch, a simple, single-game, time-killing handheld, which doubled as a clock, hence the name. Game & Watches were very successful in Japan and overseas, even warranting ports of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. It's quite a different experience playing those games on small liquid crystal displays, but I still love them. I'll talk more in depth about Game & Watch games in another video, but suffice it to say the success of the Game & Watch series and the Donkey Kong series helped Nintendo's confidence in pushing forward with game development. Now, after having two major hits with Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., they decided to split up Mario and Donkey Kong, both very popular characters in their own right, and give them separate franchises to headline. Unfortunately, information on development of Donkey Kong 3 is extremely limited, especially compared to the amount of info we have on Donkey Kong and even Donkey Kong Jr. In fact, many people don't even know there was a third installment of the Donkey Kong arcade series of games. I believe part of this is because of the way Nintendo handled distribution of this game. Nintendo's answer to America's video game crash was to try to mitigate the cost by using Nintendo packs. Basically, instead of having to buy an entirely new arcade cabinet, Nintendo would send special packs which would allow you to modify your existing Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr. cabinets into a Donkey Kong 3 cabinet. Therefore, Donkey Kong 3 never actually sold any of its own cabinets. As some of you may have guessed, a major issue with the Nintendo Pack solution is that Donkey Kong was already an extremely popular coin-guzzling game, and converting your Donkey Kong cabinet into a Donkey Kong 3 cabinet meant you no longer had Donkey Kong. In Japan, Donkey Kong 3 was still relatively successful, but in the US it only sold 5,000 units. Compare that to Donkey Kong's 60,000 or Donkey Kong Jr.'s 30,000. Yikes. As we know, Mario famously changed careers and became a plumber, which paid tremendous dividends for him. Donkey Kong, however, was less fortunate with his solo ventures for a while. Shigeru Miyamoto was still the head game designer for Donkey Kong 3, and Hirokazu Tanaka, who had composed music for Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., reprised his role as well. Beyond that, I wasn't able to find much information on the development of Donkey Kong 3. When it comes to the plot of Donkey Kong 3, Miyamoto shook things up once again. This time, Donkey Kong, while still continuing his troublemaking escapades and having escaped Mario's clutches thanks to Donkey Kong Jr., finds his way to an unsuspecting greenhouse to cause trouble. This time it is up to our newly introduced protagonist, Stanley, a fumigator, armed only with a bottle of bug spray, to protect his precious flowers and stop Donkey Kong from wreaking havoc. Not much is known about Stanley aside from most people feeling he's a pretty underwhelming and forgettable replacement for Mario as the protagonist. After Donkey Kong 3, Stanley never made another major appearance in a Nintendo game. Gameplay-wise, whereas Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. pioneered the video game genre of platforming, Donkey Kong 3 interestingly tries to continue this innovation by mixing platforming with the popular space shooter genre. In space shooter games, such as Space Invaders and Galaga, swarms of enemies will attack from the top of the screen in various patterns, while the player shoots at them from the bottom of the screen. In Donkey Kong 3, Donkey Kong and the bugs attack from above in various patterns, while Stanley shoots at them from below. However, Stanley can also make use of 3 platforms on the ground in order to get closer or further away from Donkey Kong and the dangers of the bugs. It was an interesting concept, and I appreciate Miyamoto's willingness to experiment and try new things, even within pre-existing game genres. There is evidence that Donkey Kong 3 dipped into Nintendo's back catalog of games for inspiration. The Game & Watch game Greenhouse came out about a year prior to Donkey Kong 3 and has some very strong similarities. In Greenhouse, an unnamed fumigator who looks very similar to Stanley wields an identical spray bottle and must ward off worms and spiders from his greenhouse plants. It's possible that both games were developed simultaneously, since it's much quicker to produce a small handheld Game & Watch than a mainline arcade cabinet game, but either way, it would seem that the games influenced each other or came from the same concept.
Stanley's going buggy, Mario Brothers have their hands full, and Donkey Kong's going ape.
Before we jump into playing the game, let's take a quick look at the NES manual for Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong's loose in the greenhouse and only Stanley the Bugman can stop him. Armed with a can of bug repellent, Stanley must work furiously to keep Donkey Kong and the Buzzbees and Bee Spies away from his flowers. Get the super spray and you can blast your way through 3 screens full of greenhouse excitement. Controls are simple for the NES version. The A and B buttons shoot, while using the D-pad allows you to move left or right and up and down on the platforms. As usual, Game A is beginner and Game B is expert, and you can play with 1 or 2 players. There are 3 levels, which loop after you complete the third, becoming harder and harder each time. However, the first time around you skip the second stage, going directly to the final level. It's only on the repeat rounds that you get to play the second stage. In each round you need to spray Donkey Kong repeatedly until he reaches the top of the screen or time runs out. You also need to spray the bugs when they attack you or try to steal the flowers at the bottom of the screen. There's a can of super spray on some levels which you can get if you push Donkey Kong up far enough on the vines. Super spray makes your shots more powerful but wears off over time. And now, for my favorite part, the characters. We already know about Stanley and Donkey Kong, but here we have our first baddie, the Creepy. These guys are snakes who climb down from the trees on the sides and try to hurt you or get in your way. They can't be killed without the super spray, so they're really annoying. They can overwhelm you quickly if you're not paying attention. The other enemies in this game are confusing because different sources call them different things, even on official Nintendo products. So here's what I could kind of gather based on all of the information. The most common enemies are these guys, the Buzzbees. They'll fly from the top and attack you with spears and try to steal your flowers. If they do steal a flower successfully, they'll turn into a blue bee bomb, or super bees, which are really fast and dive bomb you relentlessly. In much later rounds, the Buzzbees become blue and are harder to deal with. The second most common enemies are the Bee Spies, or Queen Bees. They take 2 hits and then explode, and usually they've got 2 Buzzbees protecting them. After a few rounds you'll see these guys, Attackers, or Buttyflies. They slowly move down the screen and then they attack you quickly from the sides. Later they get replaced by the much quicker Beetle enemies. And lastly there are Moths. They're the toughest enemies to deal with. Alright, now that we know the basics, it's time to hop in and play Donkey Kong 3. For the last 2 videos, I played the NES versions first, but this time I want to start off with the arcade version. Right off the bat, we're dropped into this cool vaporwave looking greenhouse. I really like the purple theme going on. What other game can you spray Donkey Kong in the asshole as your primary defense against him? I got him high enough that he drops the super spray. This stuff is the best, it makes it so easy. Level 2 is the boss level. I love the pine tree aesthetic. Makes it feel like this part of the greenhouse is like a mountainous section. The creepies in this level are so annoying. Get out of the way, you damn nematodes. Oh shit! Donkey Kong throws coconuts at you in this game on some levels. Funnily enough, the coconut motif will continue in the Kong line of games for years to come, even being a major part of the wonderful 2-song per episode Donkey Kong Country cartoon.
I wanna know the secrets that the crystal holds and all the magic power that it brings. I'm the big kahuna. I should
Quality
know what's
content.
going on.
Alright, here we go again. Gotta stop these fucking bugs from stealing my shit. Bruh, fuck off. Round 3. Alright, it's gonna take everything I've learned up to this point to fuck! 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 Good thing I've got unlimited credits in this game.
Oh, where do I even put this stupid...
Alright, time for a second go around. Ah, dang it! That was worse than the last time. Oh, Jesus, what the fuck? Jesus Christ, it's like a horror game. Now we know why Stanley never appears after this game. Ah, I'm so close, I just gotta get the spray bottle! Blast DK in the gooch!
Hell yeah.
Feeling good about this. Oh, hell yeah! I still have the super sprayer power up. I love it when this thing lasts into the next level. Makes things so much easier. Ooh, things are getting heated in here pretty quick. I should expect this by now. Ah, I see. So if you just attack DK quickly when you have the super spray, you can basically just skip over the bugs. That's definitely going to be my strategy moving forward. Finally, stage 4. As you can see, there's no way to get up directly to the third platform from the middle. This makes it the hardest level since you can't spray DK's big butt to the top from the second platform. God damn it!
Not the beat!
Shit! Fuck!
Ooh, I think I'm gonna make it! I've got the super spray and everything! Ah, shit, it wore off. Ah, what the? I didn't even see what happened. Alright, I died, so the super spray bottle spawned. I can do it. I just gotta knock it down. Yes! And we're in business. Oh, that feels good. Oh no, he's gonna get my flower! Ah, fuck it, I've got bigger things to worry about right now. Oh shit, he's dive-bombing me! Well then, note to self, don't let the bugs get the flowers or they'll become killer demon bees. Yes, 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 yes! This is the farthest I've gone so far, level 7! But it's another one of these red tree greenhouse levels. Ugh, these ones are the worst. Man, come on with that shit. I didn't even see where the bullet came from. Ugh, now I gotta play all the way up to this point again.
Fuck! No! Damn it! Shit! Oh. Fucking... Are you serious? Stop. Come on. Really? Really? Wow. Oh my god. Fucking... God! Stop! 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 Fuck! No! Oh my god. Come on. Really? Fuck! Jesus! Ah! Seriously? Christ. No! Oh my god. Come on.
Ugh, I just can't get past level 7. It's like a wall of impossible chaos. It's too hard to simultaneously push DK up the mines, protect the flowers, and not run into the creepers all at the same time. At this point, I've been trying for hours and I just can't do it. I want to get to the higher levels so I can show you guys the blue Buzzbees and the beetle and moth enemies, but they don't show up until crazy high rounds like 18 and 24. How am I ever gonna get there if I'm struggling with level 7? Level freaking 7! I'm gonna practice off screen for a while and see how far I can get. Alright, I got a good night's rest. It's a new day. I might finally make it to level 8. Please. Yes! Level 8, baby! These pine tree levels aren't even as hard as the others, so I'm sure I'm gonna beat it. No.
And so J-Comics fought. God did he fight. With courage, tenacity, strength, beauty. Oh, it was a sight to behold. Yet he would fail. Time and time and time again. It was a ridiculously hard game. Impossible, some might even say. Finally, after hours of playing, he realized what the problem was.
Oh. What's this? Oh. Holy shit, it's amazing what a few extra lives will do. I can finally see the blue Buzzbees! Well, that was a tough experience, but it was fun to test my skills and see how far I could get. I'm pretty satisfied. I wish I could have gone to the beetles and the moths, but what are you gonna do? Now I think it's time to take a look at the NES version and check out the differences. Wow, the visual difference is immediately apparent. I know the NES versions are typically a graphical downgrade, but it seems a lot more obvious with Donkey Kong 3 than Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr. I do love Stanley's blue hair though. Right off the bat, it seems much easier to me. It takes less time to get Donkey Kong to the top of the stage and the super spray seems to last longer. However, it does seem to be more difficult to rack up lives. Even still though, with only 3 lives I was able to get to level 13 and see the beetle enemies, my favorites. Look at them, so cute. After some practice, I was even able to reach level 15 and see the most powerful enemies, the moths. They look pretty cool. They've also cut out Donkey Kong's defeated cutscene where he falls to the ground when you beat him in stage 3. No more Stanley dance either. Movement on the NES controller feels weird after using the Nintendo Switch Pro controller for the arcade version. It took me a while to get used to, and it seems like it's harder for me to hit the enemies when they're running away with the flowers. God, just get them already! The Buzzbees also don't turn into bee-bombs if they successfully steal a flower, they just disappear, which also makes the game easier. And it also seems like there's less enemies overall per level, making it easier to clear the stages by just wiping out all of the bugs. And they've also cut out the Vine Eaters. These things only showed up in the arcade version when the timer ran out. They'd chew through Donkey Kong's vines until he fell down and you would lose immediately. They're kind of like proto-chain chomps or piranha plants from Mario. I like these little guys. Unfortunately, Donkey Kong 3 has not received as much attention or praise as either Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr. before it. While Mario, DK, and Jr. would all go on to reprise their roles in future high-profile games, Stanley and the Bugs would fall into obscurity. The only other game Stanley would be playable in would be a remake of Donkey Kong 3 for the Game & Watch series the following year in 1984. The game was part of a short-lived Versus series of games, which only included boxing, later being renamed to Punch-Out, and Donkey Kong's hockey. What the hell am I looking at? In this game, Stanley and DK are on opposite ends of the screen, and using bug spray must push the flies in the center to the opposing side in order to win. The flies move randomly, but I found the best technique was to just fill up my bottle and immediately spray in the center, since the flies will be in the center more often than the top or bottom. I ended up winning 3 times in a row. It wasn't very fun on my own, but maybe it would have been more fun with another player. But I don't have the original Game & Watch, so I'm out of luck. It's too bad Donkey Kong 3 is so forgotten by most people. I think it's just as fun to play as Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., and it's a worthy conclusion to the arcade trilogy. It's weird, fun, addicting, and brings something new to the series, just like the other 2 did. Thankfully, you can play Donkey Kong 3 on Nintendo's NES Online service if you have a monthly online subscription for Nintendo Switch. And you can also get the arcade version on Switch as well, thanks to the Arcade Archive series by Hamster. That's how I got the footage for this video. And that's Donkey Kong 3, the Donkey Kong arcade series' weird black sheep of a brother. I've had a great time covering the Donkey Kong arcade trilogy here on Friday Night Games, and I hope you have too. But as with all good things, it must come to an end. Luckily, the video train will keep on rolling. We've just gotten started. Next time, we're going to be taking a look into Nintendo's first handheld games with the Game & Watch series. Stay tuned for more adventures with Friday Night Games.